The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Reproduction or dissemination other than for the purpose of education or information without the express written permission of the Phoenix Research Institute or Nova Society Media is strictly prohibited. We'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society, and today we'll conclude that kind of listen-in that we had to a conversation while we were waiting for a guest to appear between Brooklyn, Scott, and myself, just talking about some of the things and the events in the news. So let's listen in.
So, Brooke, for the first part of what you brought up, I have never heard that illegal immigrants are taking over people's houses and shooting them or whatever it is. I've never heard that. For the most part, what I heard was they're going to go after criminals. What we saw was they're going into people's places of work to arrest them. So these are not bums who are out of work or criminals and stuff like that. These are hardworking people who they're going to arrest them. In some cases, there was a rumor that they went to the school, but that turned out to be the Secret Service, not ICE, that went to that school because an 11-year-old had posted on social media something nasty about Trump. So they sent the Secret Service to the school. So, and what's her name? Caroline Levitt, the young press secretary, was asked, "Hey, I thought you were going after people who are committing crimes." And she said, well, just by their being here, they're committing a crime. Exactly. And again, that is not the case, because for the most part, these people did not, run across the desert or swim across the Rio Grande. They came into airports and they overstayed their visas.
Yeah, that's what Holman
I know a ton of Irish people in New York City who came here as students to visit family and just never went back to Ireland, and they're living in, Queens, Trump. They're living in Sunnyside and Woodside, Queens, and they're part of the life there, and they're, good Americans for the most part. They contribute to society, but they're here illegally. But how illegal? Not very illegal. It's a civil misdemeanor to be here if you came in at a port of entry and just overstayed your visa. It is a criminal misdemeanor if you cross the barrier illegally. Okay, so there are two distinct crimes here. For the most part, they're going after people who would be here legally if it wasn't for the fact that their visas had expired, and they should have gone home.
Right. So that could be really anyone. That's what I understand from something that this Homan guy said the borders are, that if a person is here and should not be here, then the person has committed a crime. And I thought, oh God. So that means that anybody who looks like the person shouldn't be here, literally anybody can be stopped anywhere for any reason and asked to prove identity, I guess.
Well, we're seeing that. So last night I watched a great movie on Netflix, a Norwegian movie called Number 24. It's a really good movie. It's about the top Norwegian resistance fighter, a very young guy, and all that he went through during World War II. A fascinating movie. Throughout the entire movie, it's all Germans asking people to see their papers. And we're seeing that here in the United States now. Native Americans are being asked to show their papers to prove that they're American citizens. And Tom Homan actually invoked a Supreme Court decision from 1884 that said that Native Americans are not American citizens because they're already members of their own nation, which in 1921, I believe, Congress fixed by having a law declaring all Native Americans American citizens. But Tom Homan is skipping that part, and he's going back to the Supreme Court decision that was wrong and stupid, like the Dred Scott decision, which he'll be invoking next, and brought that up as proof that, hey, we could stop Native Americans because they're not really citizens. It's a world gone wrong.
Yep.
And then that leads me to my next point, which is now apparently Trump is floating the idea of deporting American citizens who are in prison, dangerous people, and he says that they're trying to make a deal or find a place for them to go, these dangerous criminals, because we don't want them in our jails here. They cost too much to keep here. We want to deport them and pay a small fee for them to be housed and taken care of elsewhere, which would mean Russia, North Korea, or some, I can't imagine what country would take a dangerous criminal from the United States and put them in their jails. He wants to deport those citizens, which is going to leave us with an awful lot, if that were to happen, would leave the United States and a privately run jail system with an awful lot of empty space for a lot of people who are enemies at home, maybe be put into, or like the bishop who criticized Trump, people were calling for her to be deported. So I can see where anybody who displeases Trump or is in the way or anything like that, American citizen or not.
I think that's called exile. That's not really deportation, because deportation suggests that you came from somewhere first, right?
Exactly.
They're going to deport
Well,
Mark up to West New York or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're using the incorrect word. So, yeah, I mean, it would be exile, not deportation. I mean, when they're finished with the present regime, is finished with all the criminals who are from other nations, they're going to want to turn to other people next, because that's how, Stalin and Mussolini and Hitler, that's how these authoritarian regimes operate.
Yeah, I don't need a lawyer. I need a travel agent. Just let me pick where I want to go and you help me get there. That's all I really ask. If I'm exiled, I just want to go to the right place.
So, I mean, what are your thoughts on all this? I mean, and it just keeps happening and happening. And I mean, these are being challenged in court and stayed and whatnot. I just
wanted to go back to your earlier point about the people taking over houses. I think you might have misread that or misheard it, because it's not taking over their houses. It's using up the housing supply for illegal immigrants so that good homegrown Americans can't afford to live there. And there's a kernel of truth there, but this was not like people storming other people's houses and taking it over. That is not, I don't think, a thing right now. At least I haven't seen any.
No, I don't.
We discussed it a few months ago, where if they deport all the illegal aliens, we'll have that housing stock to give to nice white people. But we also agreed that it's mostly undocumented immigrants who are in the construction trade and are building new houses. And without those new houses, eventually the housing stock would fall off.
So what are your thoughts about, the removal of Americans from jails and prisons, or sorry, it would be prison, not jail. Jail is temporary, from prisons, and sending them elsewhere and exiling them and paying another.
We've talked about this before, Brooklyn.
Yeah.
You can come up with whatever. You can come up with whatever plan you want to come up. You can come up with whatever idea you want to come up with. We're going to take all these criminals, and we don't want them. We're going to send them someplace else. Now comes the logistics. Where the hell do you think you're going to send them to?
Australia?
I don't know. Trump said he's in conversation with.
I mean, nobody wants them. I mean, maybe the Russians will take them because they need more soldiers. There's no doubt about that. Maybe the North Koreans will take them. Okay, great. Antarctica. I mean, where exactly? Again, they spout this stuff,
right?
And it's easy to spout it. It's easy to say, I'm going to go out tomorrow. I'm going to go to training camp for the New York Mets, and I'm going to be one of the starting pitchers. I can say it. It sure as hell ain't going to happen, but
even the Supreme Court would be against that.
Everybody would be against that. I'd be banned from Queens. But I mean, again, you got to look at these things beyond what is just being said. You've got to look at it and say, is this even possible?
Well, that's what I'm asking you. I mean,
No.
Trump said that he was in conversation with this and that. Do you think that Russia or North Korea, for example, would take American prisoners?
Yeah, they take them all the time.
Yeah, really? Why
And
not?
we have to pay a
From
lot of money to
American
get
prisons.
and
Sure,
we
why
have
not?
to pay a lot of money to get them back or
Yeah,
release
sure. They'll
release
take
their
them.
worst people from our jails.
Yeah, they're going to take them, and the Russians are going to make them soldiers, throw them at the Ukrainians. The North Koreans are probably going to make them, I don't know, slave labor because they're really good at that. I mean, yeah. I can tell you right now, the big evil Chinese aren't going to take them.
We're
Right.
like 1.5% of the vote away from Trump going to Russia, probably. If Kamala Harris had won the election.
No, I understand that. I just I understand that the person doing all this is a convicted felon. It's but that is conceivable. Yes.
All right, let's talk about what is actually happening instead of what could potentially happen. Because as Mark says, and he's absolutely right. You could propose all kinds of wacky stuff. Like the Iron Dome thing. That was yesterday. That's a great one. We're gonna have Iron Dome over America now. I don't know where they're putting it. Iron Dome is really good if like Mexico shoots a missile at us, we could knock a Scud missile off the map if it was sent from close by. It's got nothing to say about intercontinental ballistic missiles flying from, let's say, North Korea or someplace like that, right? Iron Dome is useless for that. So this is a ridiculous idea that is probably be highly disruptive for some communities who would all of a sudden have a missile silo in their midst. It's just ridiculous. There are a lot of ridiculous ideas, but the things that are happening, which are crazy, are, for one, flights of repatriated Afghan helpers who were taken out of Afghanistan but not yet brought to America have stopped. And in places that were ready to accept, let's say, 1,000 Afghans who were helping us out during that 21-year period that we were over there, we're waiting for these people to come, and all of a sudden they're not there, and they're like, why aren't they here? What happened to the Afghans that were coming? We're all set for them. And the answer is, we've decided that we're not going to bring them here. Now, I don't know how many times you heard since 2022, I guess it was, that Biden abandoned people over there. Biden left the equipment over there in Afghanistan. He left our people behind. The people that were helping us out, he left them behind. Well, as it turns out, projection again, right? Every accusation is a confession. One of the things that Trump now says he hates about Milley is that Milley is the one who convinced him to leave the equipment there. That means that the decision to leave the equipment there was made under Trump. He gets the blame or credit for that, whichever you think is deserved, not Biden. He had nothing to do with it. He wasn't president at the time that decision was made, okay? And second, Biden didn't leave people behind. Trump is leaving them behind, or not bringing them here to America anyway. And these people are stuck in limbo in places like Cyprus and other places where they're being held, vetted, processed to come to America after serving with our military during that war. So, that's actually happening. And we should probably talk more about that than we should talk about, whether we're going to empty the prisons and send them overseas, which would be convenient, but not particularly constitutional.
And yeah, Scott's right. When we talk about the Iron Dome, and I saw that too, and I thought, wow, really? It likens going back to Ronald Reagan and Star Wars. It goes back. But here's the difference. Ronald Reagan, even though he knew we didn't have it, there was a firm belief that maybe we could pull it off, but I don't think he ever intended it That was just basically to scare the heck out of the Russians. That's all it was meant to do, to change the balance of power with these people. And that was a very strategic move. What they were talking about, I remember seeing the graphics that they had about what this Star Wars was going to do and thinking, my gosh, I mean, somebody in Hollywood really did a heck of a great job in special effects. And that's basically all it was. And all Reagan was saying is, we're going to develop this. We're going to change the balance of power by developing this, and this will take care of intercontinental ballistic missiles. This will take care of all that. This will make Russia's nuclear arsenal worthless. And that was the idea behind it. Trump and his cronies basically are throwing up something that is used in Israel. And as Scott said, short range, yes, it did work very nicely, even though Iran was shooting some stuff at it. But again, comparably short range. And we're not talking about we're not talking about nuclear weapons here. So again, it's a matter of saying something just to hear yourself say something and coming back. And you got to look at these things and say, is this even legitimately possible? And in most of it, the answer is no. And I really do think back in Reagan's time, there were some people, the Star Wars people and the Trekkies, and that really thought that maybe this was possible. Maybe we were going to develop a transporter, who knows? But for the majority of the people, no. But the Russians' fear is that, those Americans are kind of clever. They got a lot of scientists over there. Maybe we ought to talk.
Or at least they knew that they couldn't do it, right?
Right.
So they couldn't compete. They don't know whether we could do it or not,
right.
But they know they can't, and that means that it's a plus on our side. And after the Challenger disaster, which I think was 86, 85, I forget, they needed something to do with the space program, and this was like something that you can do with the space program.
Matter of fact, the Challenger disaster was 86, and I think it was either today or yesterday is the anniversary.
It would be
of that, yeah.
The whole thing is just so inane.
Well, you were saying you watched a good Norwegian movie, Scott. You got to check out Occupied.
Okay.
It's a Norwegian. It's a Norwegian movie. It's a show about the Russians come in and take over Norway.
Okay, Occupied, and what's the other? Scott, Prisoner 24. What?
Not Prisoner, just Number 24.
Number 24.
It's on Netflix. It's really good.
Yep.
Really
Occupied.
Good. My least favorite thing about it was that it was Norwegian, but I did watch it in Norwegian with subtitles.
Well, that's what.
And 24. Number 24.
Number 24.
And the Occupied is half of it's in Norwegian. When the Russians speak, it's in Russian. When the Americans speak, it's in English, and when the Russians and the Norwegians speak, it's in English. So there's a lot of it really is very, very interesting. Anyway,
these movies that don't allow you to doom scroll while you're watching the movie are getting harder to watch because I sit there with my phone in my hand watching a movie, and I could listen to it if it's in English, but I have to watch the movie if it's got something I need to read.
I'm trying to spend less and less time focused on.
But cutting out TV news altogether is the first best way to start. Don't watch the news. I don't have
television, so I don't need to worry about that. It's
CNN got rid of Acosta.
Yeah.
No, he quit.
They're all preemptively cooperating.
Yeah.
He resigned.
They fired. I think they.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, you're correct. Yeah.
Because they were cooperating.
They took a show away.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were actually going to put him at a different time slot.
Yeah, like midnight.
That didn't work. So it was.
Because they're cooperating, and this is what I don't understand. This appeasement does not work.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of it.
The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Apple iTunes, the largest source of podcast and music on the internet, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your source for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. We'd also like to thank all of our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a question or a comment, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So for Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Scott Gershwer, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember that true power in society is knowledge. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, BH Conflict Resolution Services, a full-service dispute resolution firm offering expert and cost-effective mediation services to couples, groups, and businesses. BHCRS can be reached at www.bhcrs.com.